Hi and welcome to the Felt Hub. We are going to be making these gorgeous sheepy baubles today. You can go seasonal or something less seasonal so you can keep it up all year round. What you really need though is a good firm ball for a felted base. Now the smaller one is one I made, the bigger one is one that I've bought. Feel free to use a bought one. There is a tutorial at the end for the smaller one that I made to show you how to get a perfectly needle felted ball. So what I'm going to do is going to get the face down first, and I want to mark the points of the nose just so that I know that everything's central. So just find what you want as your central point, and we're going to work on a V shape with a line. So we've created 3 little dots for the V, and then a bit further down another dot so that we know where we are going with that line. And I'm going to be using some black wool top. I'm going to twist it, pull it quite secure, and then I'm going to push it in to where I've placed these dots. I'm just using a 38 star needle. You can use that for the entire project. So push it in really firmly, leave a loose end. I've used wool top because you can stretch it without it breaking. And then placing your finger on the wool, pop your needle in the other little dot that you made. And what you want to be careful of is that you don't pull the other wool out, which is why I've got my finger keeping that nice and secure. Don't worry about the loose ends just yet. We'll trim them in a little while. And then I'm going to work down from this second dot here, which is the middle of the V. And I'm going to take that down to where the mouth is going to start. Pull that wool tight, and again hold the ends that are already felted in so they don't pull out again, and push that right through the same hole repeatedly. You want to stay in the same spot. It wants to be nice and firmly tucked right in there, and then just pull that wool straight and just keep felting. Lose some of that wool so we know that it's gone quite deep and we know it's going to stay. Now where the mouth finishes is where we're going to put our other 2 dots, and I'm going to show you a really neat little trick to help you get that curve, because it can be a bit tricky if you're not quite sure how to do it. Don't worry about putting dots around the rest of the mouth. What we're going to do is pop a felting needle or another pin or some sort here, and we're just going to sort of pull that wool around that felting needle so it stays in that curved shape. And then we're going to felt into that hole we've created. This is such an easy way to make what can be quite a difficult task much, much easier. And can you see how, because we've held that wool in that position, we've got a nice little curve there. And I'm not really bothered. I'll just secure it very gently, that curve, but I'm just pretty much going to leave it. I'm not going to do a lot with that. And then the excess wool we keep, because we can use that again. I've just gently secured it. As you can see, I've hardly touched it at all. And then we're going to start at the base of that line so that the mouth becomes one piece, or looks as if it becomes one piece, and we do exactly the same again. Pop that needle in place to secure it and do the same. There we go. We've got this fabulously neat mouth now. And you can, it's up to you how you style that mouth, whether you want it sad, happy, or in between. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm just going to trim off close to that felted ball, that excess wool. And look how neat that is. And it's really simple to do. And then I just need a little bit of wool just to complete that V. I'm just going to use that bit that I trimmed off. Hold it in place. And aim for the centre of that V where the first part on the left joins, and then hold that down with your finger so it doesn't pop out. Hold it quite securely and pop that needle and that wool into that other hole. And because we put those little marks to start with, it made it so much easier. And then the eyes, we're going to do exactly the same as we did for the mouth. So we want 2 dots on each side, as closely matching as possible. You don't have to measure it, just by sight is fine. And then we're going to do exactly what we did for the mouth. We're going to pop one end in the first little dot we marked, push that right through in the same spot. What you don't want to be doing is moving away from that area. You want to keep going in and out of the same hole. Keep your fingers on the wool so that you don't lose too much of it. And as you can see, same as I did with the mouth. So I want a slight curve. We've got this sleepy eye that we're going to create. So we're going to make this slight curve. And it doesn't have to be a felting needle that holds it in place. It can be a sewing needle, a dress pin, anything you like really. But if you've got a spare felting needle, just use that. And you see how neat and nice that line is. And then just again, trim close to where you felted. And if you've got any little bits poking out, you can just tuck those in with your felting needle just to tidy it up. And then we're going to do the same on the other eye. I've noticed on this first eye that I did that it's not quite as thick as the second eye, so I'm just going to pop a little bit more wool on. And that's one of my top tips, is always start with less than you need. You can always add some more. And if it's gone completely wrong, just pull the wool off and start again. It's much easier. So we're going to add the eyelashes next, and I'm going to show you how I felt them on, but you can sew them on as well, which is a bit quicker and also means that every eyelash is going to be the same thickness. So it's entirely up to you. I do both. It depends what mood I'm in, but I'm going to show you how I felt them on. So again, you're working along that line that you created for the eye, leaving loose ends that you're going to come back and trim. And then you're going to repeat that. So I think I've done 6 or 7 eyelashes on this one. So just go along, sort of work out roughly the gap between each one and just repeat the process. So you want a really tiny thin piece of wool though. Don't overdo this with the wool, otherwise it looks really heavy. And again, as I said before, if it's wrong, pull it out and just do it again if it's too long, and try and keep them all around the same length as well. And I've curved mine in slightly, so they're going to sit at a slight angle. And hold on to that wool. Make sure you're not losing it as you're felting the other end. And you can see the tiny amounts I'm using. And just tuck any loose bits in. And you can come back at the end and tidy it all up again. And when you're doing this, make sure you take that black wool away from the felted ball because it will show up. So don't leave wisps sitting on the face. Just get rid of them as you go. And then it just means that it looks a lot neater and saves you having to pick everything off at the end once you've got all the other embellishments on. But this is really, really easy. And like I said, some black thread and a sewing needle works just as well. But I'm showing you how to needle felt it on. And then as close as you can get without cutting into it, trim that excess away and make sure you don't cut into that shape you've already created here. And as you can see, I've done the second eye now, but I've got a little bit of a rough edge there. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of wool on top of that just to neaten it up. It's easier to do it that way than to try and neaten it up each eyelash. And just pop that in as you did when you created that shape at the beginning. And I'm just working along the top to make sure that those eyelashes are not sticking out over the top of that eye. And then I'm just going to trim again close to the eye as possible without taking any of that wool we've felted in away. And then just make sure that that curve is sitting nice. And there we go. That's the face details ready and done. So what I'm going to show you here is, whilst we've got a seasonal one, I want to show you how to make some horns to add to this, because it really does add something special to this bauble. And it's so easy to do. So I've just got a pipe cleaner here, 15cm pipe cleaner, I believe, and I've got some sort of light brown carded wool. This is Shetland wool top, and I'm using wool top because you can pull on it without it breaking, and I just find that a little bit easier, but carded wool works just as well. So wrap it around the end, just felt a little bit with your needle. Make sure you're using a robust needle. I'm still using the 38 star because if it hits that pipe cleaner, it's not going to break, or it's less likely to break. And keep the wool flat and then just twist it round. And can you see how I'm covering this pipe cleaner, but I'm hardly felting at all. I'm just working my way down. And I'm going to keep going and keep going. Keep that wool flat. You don't want it twisted because then it becomes lumpy and uneven. We want a nice even shape when we finish. And when you get 2/3 of the way down, just use your needle again, just to sort of tack on that wool, just so it holds to itself. Because we're going to roll it in our hands to smooth it once we've really got going with it. So we're just going to continue down towards the end of the pipe cleaner, keeping that wool nice and flat. Remember, we want that smooth finish. And this technique you can use for so many different projects, for horns for your needle felted animals, whether it's cows, sheep, safari animals, whatever it is you're using. And then just once you get to the end, just again tack that wool just so it holds, and then we're going to work our way back down. And don't worry if there's a little bit of pipe cleaner showing through at the end, because once we start to whiz that around in our hands, that will sort of spill over the end and we'll lose that pipe cleaner completely. So I'm just working down, keeping that wool flat. And what I'm going to do this time is, when I get towards the end, I'm going to stop. I don't want to be going right to the end of the pipe cleaner because we want a nice point on the end of this for the horns. So we're going to stop just shy of the end, maybe about, I don't know, 1/2 inch away, something like that. And don't worry if you haven't got enough to wrap all the way, you just add another bit on and carry on. Important though is keep that wool flat, because that will really ensure that the aesthetic of these horns looks as best as it possibly can. And just keep working, keep wrapping that whichever way you're comfortable with, but keep it nice and tight. It doesn't want to be loose and saggy. It wants to be very close and firmly wrapped around that pipe cleaner. And can you see I'm stopping there because I want to keep this end slimmer so that we can create our point and a really nice shape for our finished horns. So we've built these horns up now to what I think is a nice size, and we're just going to gently felt just to make sure it holds, but don't felt in the centre. We're actually going to cut these horns in half. So we want that wool in the centre nice and loose, because that's what we're going to use to attach to the head. So just work your way down and then pop it in your hands and give it a really good rub, because that heat and friction mats all that wool securely together and makes it nice and smooth. And you see how that wool sort of come over the end of the pipe cleaner now, and we can just twizzle that between our fingers just to create more of a point. But there you go, that's nice and smooth. Just give it a twizzle at the end now where there's overlap. And there we go. We're ready to add a little bit more detail, just the final sort of detail that really does make them stand out and look like horns. To do this, we're going to take some contrasting wool. Doesn't matter whether it's lighter or darker, as long as there's a slight contrast. I've got some carded wool here, and we are just going to wrap it round the entire piece. Just slightly fix on the end, just one little piece at the end so it holds, and then we're going to wrap it round. Just turn and wrap as you go, just making sure that you don't break the wool as you go, and also making sure it's quite close together so that you can see those definite lines, almost like a barbershop pole. Keep it nice and flat as well, and thin. It needs to be really thin. So we're just working towards the end, and then I'm just going to pull that piece off there and wrap that around. And if you've got too much as well, you can cut that. So I'm just going to felt that on just in each little spot, just so it holds. No more than that is required. I've just got this little bit at the end here. Because it's carded wool, it pulls away really easily. So I'm just going to turn that and pop that little bit on. But like I said, if you can't pull it off without ruining or overstretching it, use the scissors. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more at this end. I started off, it was really thin, so I've not got quite the same contrast going on over here. And then just bring that round until you're happy with it, and fix it at the end. Careful with your fingers as well. This is where you're likely to prick them with the needle. And use finger guards if you feel happier doing it that way. Give it a quick roll just to make sure it's holding nicely, and that heat and friction will mat it together. Check the ends. Anything that's hanging over, just snip with some scissors if you can't get it neat. And then be brutal with a really old pair of scissors. Don't use your best scissors. Find the center and then just cut straight through. I know it seems really harsh, but this is what you need to do. And then because we didn't felt that wool in the center very much, it's all quite nice and fresh. You have to be careful when you cut wool because you cut through the fibers, which makes it a little bit more difficult to felt. But because we left most of that wool in the middle unfelted, it's still nice and fresh, so good for us to use. And I've just tucked in that end. It was a little bit longer so that we've got it a more even horn. So pop that on top of your ball, find where you want it to sit, and that loose wool just felt around a diagonal angle. And all this is going to be covered up, so don't worry about how it looks. That doesn't matter at all. Just work around, keep going, and it wants to be nice and firm because you want to be able to move this around. And then you're going to do the same for the other side. Pop it on, find the position, make sure it's in the same spot as the other one, and there you go. And then I've got some gorgeous curls here. You can use whatever colour you want. I'm going for the traditional white because I just think it works really well. And this is so easy. You just chuck the wool on basically and then felt it on with your needle. Now don't overdo it. You don't want to lose those curls. You want to keep them nice and proud. So just felt in a few spots until it holds and work your way around. And when you go down the sides, we've got the ears to pop on. So don't overfelt the sides, or leave the sides until later if you want, but just leave that quite loose so you can sort of lift up that wool or add it on after you've done the ears. It doesn't matter. And keep working, and there you go. Transformed already. We're not far off now. We're not far off. We've just got the ears to do. And I'm going to show you a really easy technique. So I'm using just some loose core wool here. You can use carded wool, you can use wool top, any wool you like. I've got one felting needle, and then I've got my trusty punch needle, which really speeds up the process, but it can all be done with one needle. I'm doing it on the rice mat as well because I'm using the punch needle. So you do need a softer surface so that those needles can penetrate through. If you're using a firm wool flat mat, then it's a little bit more difficult. But as I said, it can all be done with one needle. Now I'm just creating a very rough triangular shape with my needle. And this is such an easy technique, and you can use this for most animal ears, whether it be foxes, hares, sheep. This is a really good technique. and then just pull that wool over. And when you feel the resistance where you've actually created that shape with your needle, that's where you felt. So pull it in, and you can see where I sort of drew or drawn that line with my needle, there's resistance, and then you can see that makes it much easier to create the shape. And then just pull those edges in, keep the bottom loose because that's what we're going to attach to the head. You always keep that bottom area loose. Anything that's been attached to something else, keep that wool area loose so that you've got nice fresh wool to attach it to. And then I've gone to the punch needle just to speed things up. It's great. It's got 7 needles. I think I'm using 5 in this one. You can use as many or as few needles as you like. You can take them in and out at will. And then again, just pulling those edges in. Make sure those edges are nice and soft. And just keep working around. Now again, if you want to use finger guards for this, I'll show you a technique in a minute with a little bit of cardboard which will protect your fingers and help you create a really good shape as well. But get it felted up a little bit first. Again, back to the punch needle, really super speeds that up. I love this tool. It is one of my favourites. If there's one sort of needle felting gadget I would say have in your toolbox, that would be the one. Or another multi-tool. It doesn't have to be the punch tool, but something, you know, that can hold 3, 4, 5 needles. And you see how that's really come together now, nice and firm. And when I pinch that together like a little petal, you can see you've got that sheepy ear shape. And then just work along those edges. Keep those fingers splayed though, so you don't prick yourself. But if you're not quite used to the felting needle, or you're a bit nervous about pricking yourself, fold a piece of cardboard in half, put the edge of the ear along it, and then use that to protect your fingers whilst creating a really great shape. So can you see how that is really firming up and protecting you at the same time? It's a great way to create a good shape. And then you just flip that around and you do the other side exactly the same. So you want it just sort of sticking out over the edge of that cardboard. You can get fancy leather ones. I think I had a gorgeous one given to me as a gift, which the dog has chewed, but is still usable. But a piece of cardboard is perfect for the job. And there you go. So we've created our second ear now. They're nice and firm, but that second ear isn't quite the same size. So I'm popping it on the bottom of the first ear, and I'm using that as a guide just to make sure that we've got 2 perfectly even shaped ears. And that is another great technique, another great tip for getting things symmetrical. Pull off any excess wool at the base. You don't want too much. And don't worry about it being completely even. It doesn't matter because we're going to sort of fold it and then attach it. You're not going to see any of that, so don't worry about it. But what I do want to do is I want to add a little bit of pink to the inside of the ears. And you can use wool, but I love using blusher because it goes on perfectly. And no, it doesn't come off. It stays on really well because it kind of pushes, you know, if you push it into the fibres, it's not going to come off over time. And as I said, you can use wool, but I find this just gives it a perfect finish. And there you go, you've got that nice hint of pink. It's a bit washed out there when I bring it up to the camera, but you've got that nice hint of pink. Perfect and ready to add to the side of the head. So just either lift up that wool that you've popped on, and pop your ear on, or you can add that wool later. And don't worry about all these wisps because they're all going to be covered up by that curly wool. And just get stuck into it. Just get it attached and draw in with your needle. Bring it in. You don't want this flat. You want it to be cupped. So what you want to do is make sure you're bringing those edges towards the centre. And it doesn't have to be pretty where you've attached it because we're just going to pop all this curly wool on top. We're not even going to see it. The key is make sure it's firmly on and it's in the position that you're happy with. And then just tuck those curls down or add the curls on just down the side of the face, and all of that is now covered up. And then just repeat for the other side. And bend the horns into the position that you want. I've just done a simple bend in the centre for both of these. Sit them where you want. You can move them round. They're quite flexible. Tidy them up at the ends if they're a bit loose. And just take a bit of a wisp off there with the scissors. And then we are ready to add the finishing touches. So I'm using a Sharpie for this next part. You can use any felt tip you want just to create some freckles. And I've gone for the brown because black's a little bit harsh, I find. But if you like the black, then that's fine. And I'm just putting a few dots just around the cheek area and under the eyes to create these really cute little freckles. I think I've done about 9 or 10 little dots on each side. And then I'm going to use the blusher again that we used for the ears. And I'm going to give our sheep bauble some lovely rosy cheeks. And again, just pop on the blusher on the end of the brush and then just twizzle that brush. So you've got a nice sort of round, rosy area. And then when you've done both sides as well, if you find there's a little bit too much blusher on there, you can just blow off any excess. And then you can add some more as well, just to make sure that you've really pushed that into the wool. But once you've blown off the excess, then the rest of it should stay there quite nicely. So our bauble is finished, just some final touches just to tidy it up. And it is ready to place, either hang on your tree or wherever room you want to pop it into. But it looks amazing. And then you can do a really seasonal one. I popped a little hat on here and a scarf, and then we've got the little hanger there, which is just some wool yarn. And then this one I just curled with some pipe cleaners. Stay tuned for the next tutorial, hit the notification bell, and all the links for felting materials and more tutorials are in the description. Thanks for watching. Happy felting!